Welcome to Africa Geotrends, your window into Africa's power, progress, and geopolitics. Asterisk before we dive in, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the stories shaping Africa's future. The wind begins as a whisper across the Sahel, a slow, ancient breath that has shaped dunes for centuries. But today, that same wind is being captured, engineered, and transformed into something Africa has always deserved but was rarely granted: pure, sovereign power. In Niger, a country long defined by deserts, security upheavals, and underdeveloped energy systems, a new symbol is rising. Massive steel towers reach into the sky, tall, white, graceful, spinning with a promise that cuts through decades of energy shortages. These are the turbines of the Tarka Wind Project, and they mark Niger's entrance into a future where the country doesn't just survive the climate crisis, but actually leads a new path through it. Thousands of kilometers away in South Africa, in the beating heartland of coal country, another transformation is unfolding. In Mpumalanga, a region once known only for its deep coal pits and towering smokestacks, something unthinkable is happening. Coal mines, once proud, then troubled, are now being powered by wind. Clean wind, the same energy source that was seen as a threat to the coal economy, is now being built by the coal companies themselves. These two stories, from Niger and South Africa, are not just renewable energy projects. They are the unfolding chapters of a continental shift where Africa begins to command its own energy destiny, where the narrative is no longer about dependence, but independence, not about shortage, but abundance, and not about waiting for global powers to deliver change, but creating that change with African engineering, African land, African labor, and African ambition. In Niger's Tahua region, the scale of Tarka is immediately striking. The project spans a vast territory where wind maps show some of the strongest speeds in the Sahel. Here, developers are planning a wind farm capable of delivering up to 250 megawatts, a staggering figure for a country that has historically relied on imported electricity for much of its power. For the first time, Niger could supply its own clean energy and export surplus electricity to neighbors through the West African power pool. The desert wind, once an unpredictable force, is becoming a tool of national strategy. Up to 40 giant turbines will stand here, each one capable of producing clean energy day and night. When fully operational, the wind farm is expected to generate over 800 gigawatt hours per year, enough to power villages, factories, and critical infrastructure while reducing nearly 500,000 tons of carbon emissions annually. But beyond the scientific and economic power of Niger's windrise, there is a human story. Nearly 500 jobs will be created during construction, and many of them will go to local communities in the Tahua region. Roads, grid connections, service networks, all of these must be built. The wind farm doesn't just bring electricity, it brings development. It brings new opportunities in a region that has long been left behind by global investment. For decades, Niger has struggled with one of the lowest electrification rates in the world. Entire rural districts have grown up without the stability of power. Hospitals running on generators, schools without lighting, small businesses locked out of modern infrastructure. The Tarka Wind Project challenges all of that. It states boldly that Niger can design and operate world-class renewable infrastructure, that it can generate enough electricity to supply itself, and enough clean surplus to support its neighbors. The wind here is more than climate action, it is sovereignty. South Africa's transformation is just as dramatic, but in a very different way. Where Niger builds from scarcity, South Africa builds from an excess of coal. For more than a century, the country has run its economy on coal-fired power, and Mpumalanga is the heart of that legacy. But today, rising energy demand, failing coal plants, and global climate pressure have made the old system unsustainable. What emerges in its place is something unexpected: wind farms built by the very coal giants that powered South Africa for decades. The Umbala Imoyeni project, developed by Serity Green, is one of the most ambitious renewable clusters on the continent. When completed, it will deliver up to 900 megawatts of clean energy, a mix of wind farms, solar arrays, and battery storage capable of delivering consistent power even when the wind pauses or the sun sets. This is not a symbolic green gesture. This is a re-engineering of an entire region. Massive wind towers now rise above old mine roads. Turbine blades stretch across the red earth, waiting to be installed. Workers who once operated mining machinery are now being trained to weld steel foundations, assemble turbine components, and maintain advanced electrical systems. Thousands of jobs are being reshaped, not eliminated. Entire communities are witnessing the birth of a new industrial identity. The first 155-megawatt phase of the project already signals something historic. Coal companies are now powering their operations with wind energy. One-third of the electricity generated will keep South Africa's mines running. The rest will be sold through private power markets, bypassing bureaucratic bottlenecks and strengthening the country's grid directly. This is energy diversification, but it is also economic evolution, the coal belt becoming the green belt. Together, Niger and South Africa represent two sides of Africa's renewable future. One is a desert nation stepping onto the global clean energy stage with the force of a rising giant. The other is an industrial titan rewriting its most entrenched energy system. But they share the same ambition: to control their own energy narratives, attract investment, and build a future where Africa does not wait for power. Africa produces it, exports it, and shapes it. The geopolitical significance is impossible to ignore. As the world races toward net zero targets, energy independence becomes a source of power. Nations that control renewable capacity will leverage that energy for diplomacy, trade, industrial growth, and climate financing. For years, Africa sat at the edge of that conversation. Now, with projects like Tarka and Umbala Amoyani, the continent is pulling itself firmly into the center of the dialogue. Energy security has always been a vulnerability. Now it becomes a strength. The economic implications spill far beyond the project sites. New transmission lines must be built. New substations. New storage systems. These developments create long-term supply chains. Engineers, technicians, electricians, transport specialists, construction crews. It also creates new markets for industrial components, local contractors, and African manufacturing. In Niger, trucks carrying turbine blades will travel hundreds of kilometers, requiring upgraded roads and support networks. In South Africa, entire logistics operations are being redesigned to move enormous turbine parts across a province known for coal, not wind. These are not small adjustments. These are structural transformations that will last for generations. Environmental benefits also ripple outward. The reduction in carbon emissions is significant, but the improvement in local environments is equally important. Cleaner air, reduced pollution, and restored landscapes improve health and quality of life for communities that have long lived under environmental strain. Both countries also represent powerful examples of how to integrate renewable energy with existing systems. Niger integrates its wind farm into the West African power pool, increasing its regional influence. South Africa integrates wind into a coal hybrid system, stabilizing its industrial power supply. These are models that other African countries can adapt: flexible, practical, ambitious. Africa is often described in terms of its potential: its solar potential, its wind potential, its youth potential, its mineral potential. The stories in Niger and South Africa prove that potential is no longer an abstract promise. It is being built into infrastructure, job creation, and long-term national strategy. The turbines rising in the desert and the coal fields are not just machines, they are symbols. Symbols of a continent beginning to power itself not with borrowed energy, but with its own resources, its own engineering, and its own will. Africa's wind revolution is not coming. It is here. The wind that once carried sandstorms and dust now carries power, clean power, African power, the kind of power that can transform industries, electrify communities, and shape the future of a continent ready to lead the global energy transition. And as these turbines spin, the world is watching. Because Africa is no longer simply adapting to global energy change. Africa is driving it. You've been watching Africa Geo Trends, where Africa's moves shape the world. That if you haven't already, subscribe now and stay ahead of the next big story.